You're listening to the Zealous Podcast. I'm your host, Rocky Snyder, and this week I've got Korey Van Wyk in the house with me. Korey has been a professor in colleges, also CSCS. He will be presenting at the 2023 NSCA National Conference this July in Las Vegas at Caesars Palace. But he's also the acquisitions editor for Human Kinetics Publishers. And I'm sure you're familiar with that publishing group if you're in the world of strength conditioning. We're just going to jump right in, talk about performance supplements, his work with the publishing company, and a whole lot more. Hope you enjoy. In the meantime, click that subscribe button. Just do me a favor and follow us on Instagram at Rocky_Snyder. Here we go. So this week on Zealous, we're taking a different track. We're going to go into the world of publishing, and because there's so many of our previous guests who strength coaches, physical therapists, athletic trainers that have resources, bookshelves upon books. One of the publishing companies that they'll see on almost every bookshelf is Human Kinetics, because they are one of the juggernauts when it comes to the world of strength conditioning. And I just happen to have the acquisitions editor, Korey Van Wyk, on with me this week. But aside from that, he's been a college coach. Even though up in a small northwestern Iowa town, he still manages to affect the entire strength conditioning industry, and also will be one of the presenters at this year's NSCA National Conference. So we're going to dive in a little bit with that. So first of all, Korey, thanks for agreeing to be on Zealous.
Well, hey, thank you for bringing me on. You have some amazing guests, so I'm just feel lucky to be one of them.
You know, I stand at like 5'1". And so therefore I need all those giants around me so I can step up on their shoulders and see what's coming down the horizon. And you, my friend, you are a giant yourself in the publishing industry. Tell me right away, we'll get into the college sports days
Sure.
and coaching and all that and the NSCA, but how did you land a job with Human Kinetics?
Well, I should note right off the bat, I'm one acquisitions editor with HK, so we have some others. I would say, there's one that some people might know. His name is Roger Earl. So if you got certified on the previous edition of the CSCS text, he was one of the editors. So like I also stand on the shoulders, like you said, of giants. So just thought I'd mention that. So yeah, honestly, the HK job was, I don't want to say it was by chance, but it was definitely not something I was actively looking for. As far as I want to get into publishing, I want to get into the world of books. It was something where I was between jobs, I was looking, and I just thought to myself, wonder if HK has any openings. Like, I just wonder what they've got. And I went to the website, looked at openings. I saw this thing called an acquisitions editor. And I'm like, okay, editor probably has something to do with, reading books and giving feedback. And I'm a professor, so I've done that before. And I like information, I like education. So let's see what this is about. And, I start reading the job description, something about, acquiring authors and thinking of book ideas and pitching them to the company and then editing the book for its content. And I'm like, that all sounds really cool to me. Like, I love, there's like, no matter what I'm doing, there's like two things I want to do: education and network. And this literally is like, those two things are in the job description. Like I literally have to know who's who. I have to know who's doing what. I have to know who's the expert in certain areas. And my job is to see if they will write books for us.
Like, okay. So you actively go out and
actively.
So it's not that, typically, so I've written a few books myself, right? And
absolutely.
With that, you actually have to go forth and find a publisher, but this isn't the case for you. Mm-hmm. You actually actively go out and find authors and experts.
99% of our authors are acquired by our acquisitions editors. Yes, we get very few, honestly, very few pitches from outside sources, and even fewer that are viable. We'll get some that are like, I'm trying to think of one random one in the past, like I want to write a book on like herbs or something that's just like totally not an HK thing. It's not doesn't fit our audience. Or, they may be someone overseas that maybe did a self-published book and they want to see if we'll pick it up. But 99% of our authors are people that we have gone out and sought out and pitched a book idea to them and asked them if they would write the book.
Well, that makes me you just destroyed my fear of rejection now. That's great. Here I thought it was all me, but in fact, I just didn't realize that it was you guys that were going out and looking for the talent rather than trying to knock on your door.
I will say that is the opposite of most publishers.
Like well, there goes my fear of rejection coming back up again.
Like most bigger publishers, like it's just the opposite way. But because HK, it's weird to say because you're right, HK classically has these seminal kind of texts in strength and conditioning. We're the publisher for the NSCA, but on the scale of publishing, we're actually quite small. So that's where, and we're also very niche. We only publish.
Well, yeah, very niche, very niche.
We only publish on, strength and conditioning, fitness, nutrition, and health. That's it.
So I'm curious, do you guys get together like on a quarterly or annual basis and go, okay, what's the direction? What are we looking for now? Let's say it's blood flow restriction or force plate technology. What's coming down the pipe that we really need to get ahead of? Who are the leaders in the field? And can we get them to write for us? Is that what you guys do?
To a degree, yeah. I mean, as a division, so I work for the trade and professional division, which in its whole is about 6 people. And, we meet every other week to discuss projects. I meet with my fellow trade professional acquisitions editors once a month to discuss projects. But how we handle it is each AC-Ed has their own subject areas, specific subject areas that they are in charge of. So like I mentioned, Roger Earl earlier, he is all of the NSCA projects and he does some strength and conditioning. My specific subject areas are sports performance, resistance training, strength training, and nutrition. So anything having to deal with those, and in those areas, mine is a little more consumer facing versus professional facing. Like they really look to me, since Roger handles more of the professional titles with the NSCA, they kind of look to me to expand the consumer line. So these would be books more for the average person, not necessarily the professional lines at Barnes and Noble. Okay, so and then we have another AC-Ed, Michelle Earl, and
no relation, obviously, just a coincidence.
They're married, so
I did.
Yeah.
That.
They're married, so no blood relation there. But she does yoga and Pilates and like alternative fitness and running. So we each have our areas, and we are responsible for them. So we are responsible for identifying in our area what are trends, what do we need to look out for, what do we need to get ahead of, what do we need to take advantage of, where are the gaps, and what will sell. So like I will say a big challenge of the job is that last part of what is going to have a big enough audience that will sell on a scale that will be profitable. So for example, you mentioned like BFR. BFR is, I would say, fairly new, ish as far as a training modality and rehab and things like that. It's becoming more established. But if we just did a BFR book, probably not a big enough scale to get the enough sales that we would need, because it'd basically be for athletic trainers, physical therapists, maybe personal trainers. I'm not sure what the scope would be, or even if there's devices. I think there's some devices out there if you get certified. That's not a very big pool. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and then what we add into that is who's going to write it. So let's say we have a very, very niche topic, but the author that's willing to write it has a huge platform. They're well known. They're known for this thing. They're active on social media. They speak at conferences. They're willing to help us promote the book. That can change the game. You know what I mean? So it's just like there's lots of different things you have to weigh when you're looking at a specific project. But that's been really fun. Like that's been the side of publishing I've had to learn. But the the ideation of new book ideas, which is the other part of my job. Like I am responsible for growing our library in those areas, the subject areas that I mentioned. And then editing the book for its content, which kind of feels like what I used to do as a professor is in grading papers. So
I
yeah.
imagine. I mean, there's a lot of reading. Okay, just to put you on the spot, what is the most intriguing piece that you've read in the last year, or one that was surprisingly good, that kind of had you, scratching your head, going, "Oh, wow."
Oh man. You mean like something that I just found interesting or something that I learned or?
Yeah, either of those. What piques your interest right now? And you're like, "Ooh, this is a direction that I want to investigate now, based on the stuff that I read."
On the one that sticks out to my mind right now is autoregulation.
Tell me more.
Okay, so autoregulation, this concept of like fluid programming, an adaptable workload that you place upon yourself based on readiness. So this has connections to things like injury prevention. And if we talk about the management of training related injuries, whether that's in the weight room, if you're like a power lifter or a weightlifter, or on the field, if you're a team and court sport, auto-regulatory practices are a way that you modify training, the training process, and the workload and the demand placed on your body fluidly. It's not a set thing like this. It's not like here's my phase from week to week. We're going to increase load by 5. And at the end of this phase, this is where you should be. Well, we know that things get in the way. Lack of sleep, stress, poor nutrition, all these things can affect your recovery and readiness. So you employ autoregulation or auto-regulatory methods, and you adapt for that fluidly rather than rigidly. So I think this is something that's gaining a lot of steam, has gained a lot of steam. I used it when I was a strength coach all the time. I love it, especially when you have college athletes that, you get them for 4 years and that's it. And there's so many variables you can't control in their daily life. So that's a piece that when I'm reading the manuscript and I'm like, oh man, this is just going to be some really awesome information that I think a lot of people are going to resonate with.
Right on. And I can see it actually being something much more directed toward personal training clients, because it's something that we've had to organically create over the many years that I've been doing it, because it's one thing to train athletes, professional elite level, because that's their career and they are going to be the compliant clients, compared to the general population who have family life and business life and travel and just their intrinsic intrinsic motivational wavering. And so you could, like, I came into the NSCA where periodization was on the forefront. It was just starting to be built, the concept of periodization tables and periodization programs. And I tried to apply that to my personal training. And I was feeling like I was shoving a square peg in a round hole and just hammering this in there, and really getting very stressed out that, oh, this person just canceled the last minute. They're going away on a 3-week vacation. Where does that put the hypertrophy phase or the basic strength or the power or blah, 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 blah. So, so this is great. I'm very interested in autoregulation.
I think has massive application to the world of personal training, because as much as, all the things that affect everyone affects athletes, but I would say, the average person who it's not their job or it's not a major component of their life to be in peak physical condition, there's just even more variables at play. And I think a lot of people who are in personal training for any length of time do it naturally. They have to. They kind of employ autoregulation naturally by conversation. Hey, how you feeling today? Do we need to adapt training in a certain way? Okay, let's do this almost by feel. The goal of the book is to try to give some more like objective, how can we do this, and give a roadmap on methods, and then tie them even to specific goals. So
we've tapped into
how to do it.
Go ahead.
I was going to say how to do it for like more the the fitness client or general fitness capabilities is part of the book, but then, we'll also have it for strength, have it for team sports and things like that. So
Yeah, for us personally here, we tap into the autonomic nervous system rather than some type of questionnaire that is more subjective. We could
sure.
use that, but I mean, we could use a single leg balance. We could use a range of
Mhm.
motion from one movement to the other, as well as being more macro at the
Sure.
beginning of their program, because their body is continually going to be adjusting based on their strength levels, based on what's going on. And that periodized program that I was trying to encourage, I just throw that out the window, and we go basically from day to day with a general understanding of where we
Mhm.
want them to be. But
Yep.
whether they lose a loved one or a pet, or they just got a new
Exactly.
job, or their grandchildren are getting married, this is all going to
Yes.
fluctuate their stress levels. So
Absolutely.
blood pressure is kind of a pain to take, and heart
Mhm.
rate's easy enough, but heart rate isn't going to tell us everything because it's so temperamental. But
Mhm.
range of motion, strength test, just even a
Absolutely.
dynamometer.
Yep.
Yeah, that's great. Okay,
Yep.
so let's you've mentioned you're a professor a couple times here.
Yep.
uh, you've got your master's, you've got your CSCS. Where have you been teaching?
So I did all my teaching professionally at Northwestern College here in Orange City, Iowa, which is where I currently reside. I was a dual role. So like it was from the get-go, the position was kinesiology faculty and strength and conditioning coach. Like there was not that was how it was from the get-go. It wasn't like oh, you're faculty, but hey, do you want to coach a few teams on the side? No, it was
No,
set
that
that way. And then by the time I left Northwestern, I had been promoted to professor of practice, which is a rank that instead of doing research and you are required to publish, you're actually required to practice in your field. So you teach, you do like committee work for the school, and then your third prong of your job is actively practicing. So my strength and conditioning hat fulfilled that.
And how
So I
many
did.
sports? Which sports were you doing strength conditioning for?
Yep, I was football, wrestling, men's and women's soccer, cheer and dance. Yep.
Well, that's quite a load.
Yeah, and I had fewer teams. We had two full-time strength coaches. Well, two full-time people in my role, so who are the dual role. And then so our other strength coach had the other teams, although, we kind of try to account for football because it's its own kind of animal, so to speak. But yeah, we taught around 4 classes a semester. Typically, it depended on how many credit loads the class was. But I did all my teaching. I got all my teaching experience at Northwestern.
Ah, very good. And what
Yeah.
inspired you to become CSCS?
I mean, I, I'm a lucky guy that in the sense that I knew out of high school what I wanted to do, what I wanted to
Really?
get into. Oh yeah, so I got lucky. Out of high school, I stepped into a Division III school in Central Iowa called Central College, and they were one of the first schools in the entire country to have a full-time strength coach at the D3 level. I think Springfield probably beat us to the punch, but Central was very, very soon after to hire a full-time strength and conditioning coach. And
Wow.
I met him. I was lucky enough to meet him in high school. And he's like, hey, you come to Central, you can work with me in the weight room. And I'm like, okay, I'm there. So I went there and they had developed basically a curriculum, an internship curriculum, a 3-year long internship curriculum. If you were a student strength coach, you coached on the floor. You did the assignments required for the curriculum for the internship, and I did that for 3 full years in college. So, yeah, then when I became a full-time strength coach, it was just like, yep, I'm going to get my CSCS and all that stuff. So that's
And any specific sports that you lean toward, or do you
yeah.
just
I mean,
like?
I think with most strength coaches who came up, quote unquote, in the mid to late 2000s, you're strength and power focused. Everything was very football centric. You know, like if you wanted to get into strength and conditioning, you're looking at D1 football or pro football or the where you want to live. So yeah, my natural I guess bias and my natural, you know, the things I really looked at early on was for strength and power focus. So football, wrestling were in my wheelhouse. But you know, obviously at Northwestern, I had other sports that were not as at the end of that spectrum. So it really forced me to expand my viewpoints, my toolbox, everything. So yeah.
Was there one sport above the others where you learned the most from? Or like again, that you were kind of surprised that, oh yeah, this is going to be no problem. Soccer, they just kick a ball down the pitch kind of thing. And then you realize, oh, whoa, I'm learning a lot.
Oh, that's a good question. Honestly, I would say the biggest puzzle, and this is from a communication standpoint, but also is a very interesting puzzle from a training standpoint, is wrestling.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, because you need everything. You need everything. You need to be powerful, strong, aerobically fit. You have to have anaerobic capacity. You just literally need everything. Every quality that we think of that we want to target, you need it all. And you don't know when it's going to happen. So you could have a wrestling match, like the demand from match to match to match could become totally different. Totally different. You could have a match that's just a meat grinder where it's just like constant, like kind of lower quote unquote intensity work. Or you could have a lightning blitzkrieg match where it's like over in a minute. You just don't know. You have to be ready for all of it. But the bigger thing from that standpoint was they had to feel like they wanted to know, are we doing wrestling specific stuff? Like, is this program wrestling specific? Because if it's not, I don't know if I want to do it.
Sure.
That was like a big challenge, even though like the qualities needed, like the strength, the power, the capacity, you know, those were kind of things I felt comfortable with. I didn't have to worry about the speed agility aspect or the like I did with football and soccer. But they just wanted to know, hey, do you get us? Do you understand us? And if you do, then we're in. But if you don't, then we're not gonna, you know, be as bought in. So that was probably the one. Yeah.
I hear you. I like, as much as I hold in high esteem the NSCA, and I've been with them for 30 years, there is a weak spot, and that is specificity of training, in my not so humble opinion. I did a presentation not too many years back, and on the slideshow, I put from the S&C journal a program that was published that showed basically, here is this routine. And we played a little game. See if you could guess.
What sport is this?
Which sport is this?
Yeah.
And then I put it up. I think I did it like 3 times.
Yeah.
And everyone in the audience, like, I have no idea.
Yep.
Well, you should. If you look at a program, you should be able to pretty much pick it apart. One was like skiing. And it looked like a football program at the time. Now we're talking back like 10 years now, but at the same time, I see what you're saying. And I totally understand what the wrestler's perspective is that don't just throw me in a weight room and expect that just because I'm lifting a bar here and there, that it's going to carry over into the mat. To some degree, I'm going to get stronger, but it's not going to be as specific to my needs. So yeah, that's great.
You know, it's interesting you mentioned that, because that directly applies to my role as an acquisitions editor. I'm looking at those things. So because I need to look at I'm assessing a book for its content. So, and I need to know, will the reader ultimately find this valuable? Like those are the kinds of things I'm thinking about when I'm ideating a new book, when I'm looking at an outline an author submits, or a pitch an author submits, or the content of a book. You know, I'll say this publicly because the editor has also publicly talked about, or like, you know, mentioned it, is we're working on the 2nd edition of the NSCA's Developing Power.
Nice.
And I remember looking at that book initially, and, you know, as part of my role, I come up with the kind of a first initial revision plan. So what are the things are we going to change? What are we going to add? What are we going to take away? And I had the exact same thoughts as you. I looked at the programs and I'm like, what's separating these programs? They all look very similar. If I looked at these programs side by side, I can't tell you what sport this is. And I'm like, that I just don't think that's how it should be. Or we've got to at least give some like delineation to or explanation of how are we making training decisions from a movement. How are we making decisions for like the load that's in the, being recommended? So yeah, it's interesting you say that, because as an ac ed, those are things that I have to like look at and think like, all right, is the reader going to get value from this? Is it, which then obviously ties into sales, it ties into if that book sells, and then also are we putting out the best information possible?
Certainly. Yeah. And from my perspective, when we talk about specificity of training, and add to that the SAID principle, specific adaptations to impose demands, I would expect an athlete to be placed in one of their athletic positions. That is one of the more common ones. And then can we explore movement in three-dimensionality? And once they achieve that, can we add load or tempo change or something while they're in those positions? That for me is sport specificity. A deadlift, a bench press, and a squat. Well, if you're a power lifter, that's specific to you, but it's not necessarily specific to a basketball player. There may be some gains on those lifts,
for sure,
but in terms of specificity, I don't know about.
Yeah.
Okay, how about this? Let's just spin it to a different direction. Speaking of NSCA, in Vegas, you're going to be presenting on Wednesday, July 12th to kick off. You'll be the last presenter on the first day of the national conference in Vegas at Caesar's Palace. And this is also in person as well as being virtual online for those that aren't going to be able to make it. What are you speaking on?
Yes. So I am speaking on, the title of my talk is How to Evaluate Dietary Supplements. So basically what I'll be going over is how do you assess a supplement's quality by just looking at the label? And if you don't know anything about nutrition, you know biochemistry, if you don't know, you don't remember your organic chemistry terms, if you're not up on the latest research, how the heck can you evaluate if a supplement is going to be ultimately safe? Like that's the main thing we're looking at here is it going to be safe? Is this supplement going to have in it what the label says? Or is there going to be a higher risk of it having undisclosed ingredients or mislabeled ingredients?
Well, the only thing missing from that individual you just described is my face, because that is me. I got to tell you, in all honesty, Korey, and for the listening audience, during COVID, I had this epiphany of my relationship with sugar was very similar to other things that I no longer use in my life. They may have served a purpose in my early years, but it's been many, many years since I've reached for different things. But sugar, oh my gosh, it started having this conversation with me, and I realized this isn't serving me a purpose anymore. Long story short, it's been like 3 years since I've had a donut or a cookie or a piece of cake. And of course, this coming from a personal trainer, we all have those things. But one thing that I do for my little sweet treat in the evening is I take a multivitamin. That's one of those like gummy across the board shelf.
Sure. Yeah.
And the only reason I don't even look at the label, brother, I have no idea what's in it. All I'm looking for is that little sweetness. And I figure I'm rationalizing this crap because I figure, okay, it's a vitamin. So give me the lowdown. What should I be looking for? And is there a gummy kind of version out there that I can go, yeah, that's what I want?
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting because one of the most recent gummified supplements that I've seen is creatine. And I'm like, well, that's interesting. And I talked to Dr. Abby Smith Ryan about this because she's involved in she does creatine research and things like that. And she's just like, it's just another delivery mechanism. It's just another delivery form. And so, doing a gummy version it can be effective. It's totally fine. Like I have my daughter, my 3-year-old daughter, she takes a multivitamin gummy and a DHA gummy. So like these are viable mechanisms or methods to deliver multivitamins or supplements. So I just thought that was interesting.
Very cool.
Yeah. So here's multivitamin is a great example here because if you look at the back of a multivitamin, look at the supplement facts label. It is a alphabet soup of terms.
Yes.
Okay. And so have you ever heard the phrase, if you can't pronounce it, don't eat it?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Based on that, no one should take a multivitamin. Nobody. Because so what you want to see on a label is transparency. Everything should be clearly listed, and the form that it is in should be listed. So you should see on a supplement label, vitamin D, and in parentheses, it should say cholecalciferol. If you're not told the form, that's a red flag. Okay.
Why is that?
Because there's more than one form of everything. Okay. So cholecalciferol, we know, is vitamin D3, which is what we need to get it to in the body. You also have vitamin K or vitamin D2, which there's a conversion that happens there. Okay. So magnesium's a really good example. There are, I don't know, at least half a dozen versions of magnesium, because we can combine it with a salt like magnesium citrate, and that has a different effect than magnesium glycinate. Okay. Well, the most common form of magnesium is a magnesium oxide. That's almost always what you're going to see on a supplement, a multivitamin, especially if it's cheaper. Like if it's just something you bought off the shelf at Target or Walmart, it's just like, that's what's probably going to be in there. You basically don't even absorb magnesium oxide. It's terribly absorbed. So even though it might have this percentage of the RDA on the label based on the amount, the milligrams amount, you're basically getting none of it because it's a horribly absorbed form of magnesium, but it's super cheap. So what's impossible, even for me, like someone I've got a master's in nutrition, I've been studying nutrition now for like well over a decade. I pay attention to it. I cannot keep up with the forms of things. I cannot keep up with the latest version of, magnesium. So that's where I'm like, I've got to come up with a framework of how to assess these things. Because if I can't keep up with it as a professional, how the heck are other people, like just the general person walking into GNC or Vitamin Shop, how are they gonna do this? And if they care about their health and safety, how are they going to make decisions?
I hear you, because I mean, for years, owning a studio, you get approached by companies. Hey,
Absolutely.
You can put this on your shelf. Great profitability. You'll earn this much more. Wouldn't it be nice to have some other revenue stream and so on? I got to be honest, I can't keep up. Like you said, there's so much change within the world of strength conditioning that keeps me busy. I can't even
exactly.
When it comes to nutrition or supplements, I just rely on somebody that I have a little bit more faith in, that's all they're dedicated toward.
Yes.
So I hear you. I'm in that boat.
Yeah. So the presentation really came from like, okay, if the supplement label has these signs, that is the highest probability that what you're getting is high quality, meaning, again, that the label is accurate, that they're not putting things in there that are undisclosed, because, I mean, everyone knows about anabolic steroids getting put in supplements. That's pretty well known. But what I don't think people know is that there's antidepressants that get put in supplements. There's things like Viagra, Cialis getting put in supplements, amphetamines and amphetamine-like compounds getting put in supplements, just like cancer drugs have been put in supplements. Anything that the company thinks like, will this, basically make it work? It's all fair game. And so that's where I'm like, that's where they came from, right? That's this like, okay, there's some serious things getting put in supplements that can be harmful. And I really just wanted a really practical presentation that went over things that anybody can look at. And
it sounds like there's really weak regulatory action on these products. Or is there any?
There is. There is. It's a myth to say that there's no regulation. That's sometimes what people will say. The issue is there's no pre-market. There's no pre-market approval that needs to occur for a supplement to be on the shelves. And so the comparison here is always going to be pharmaceuticals and drugs, where the FDA must approve it before it hits shelves. And that does not exist for the dietary supplement industry. Interestingly, it also doesn't exist for our food system, which is when I was doing research for the presentation, I'm like, I don't think people know this, that there's really no pre-market approval that needs to occur for a food either. And that's why you see still like it's not exactly safe all the time to eat our food. Like you think about like, what was a more recent one, like romaine lettuce having contamination or things like that aren't really, that sneak into our food system. Well, I mean, that's the issue with supplements. And the FDA does still regulate them once they're on shelves, but any adverse events need to be reported. So the FDA isn't like pulling them off shelves and testing them. They wait until enough bad things happen that have been then reported to start the investigation of if something should be pulled. So as you can imagine, a lot of bad things have to happen and they need to be pretty bad,
Wow.
and yeah. And then to take action, let's say they want to take action. They want to pull ephedra off. They want to pull DMAA off the shelves. Well, that may take a couple of years. Okay. So now you've got this latency period where that's still on the shelves, it's still being consumed. And, during that time, supplement formulators are trying to figure out, okay, what's the next thing that we can make that's not quite the thing that's getting pulled off, but does the same thing. So it definitely has very loose regulations, and the FDA doesn't have enough manpower to really clamp down on these things. So while there's lots of good supplement companies out there, there's just way more bad ones.
But what about performance supplements? Because we use multivitamins as an example there, but you did mention creatine, but there's so many products out there that you just walk into a GNC and you're instantly overwhelmed the moment you walk through the door.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, there's so many e-commerce sites that are going to try and draw you in. So when it comes to athletic pursuits, whether it's the person's a strength coach listening right now, athletic trainer, return to play, what are the basic building blocks in regards to supplements that we should look for our clients and athletes?
Like what would be the base ones I would recommend?
Yeah, that's essentially that.
So I'll preface this by saying that I think it's important to consider supplements in kind of two categories. There's the category of meeting nutrient needs. That's where multivitamin will most of the time fit, unless there's a identified clinical deficiency. I would also throw protein powder into this camp, and I would throw omega-3s into this camp, although omega-3s can have a little bit more of a crossover, meaning like those are things that are technically supplements, but they're mostly used to fulfill a nutrient need.
So for those that don't have the ideal dietary choices, this comes into play.
So you're me, and you live in Northwest Iowa.
I'm
not eating salmon twice a week. It's just not happening. So if I'm not eating omega-3s through salmon or tuna, I'm literally getting none unless I'm eating a lot of chia seeds and walnuts and flax seeds, which is a inferior form of omega-3. So I've got to supplement if I want EPA and DHA in my diet. I just have to. So I'm meeting my need that way. Now, then you also have, and I'll say this camp, that the kind of meeting needs camp, the protein powders, multivitamins, fish oils, those are viable to get through food. Okay. Like protein powder is essentially a convenience supplement. Like if you want to, you can meet your protein needs fairly easily through food. All right. And again, if I eat salmon or tuna twice a week, I'd be meeting my omega-3 needs. Then the other camp is like the performance enhancing ones that have a specific performance enhancement goal and are not viable to get enough through food. Okay. Let's take creatine. Creatine has a specific role in the body. It's been identified. We know what it is. We know that if we supplement with creatine, we will increase the creatine levels in the muscle, and the functions of it will be amplified. The ceiling will be raised. We can get creatine through the diet. if you want an efficacious dose of creatine, meaning it will improve your performance, you're going to have to eat upwards of 5 pounds of red meat a day. At least. So like not very viable, right? Caffeine, like, yes, you can get caffeine through the diet via coffee and energy drinks, but then it becomes like, if you want the efficacious dose for performance, you might not want to drink 2 or 3 cups of coffee before you train. So that's another one that might be just more supplemental. So as far as like base recommendations, there's not that many, to be honest with you. So creatine,
well, actually, that's really that's heartwarming for me, because that, forever you get those queries like, what should I be taking? And the long and short of it is whole foods, seasonal vegetables, lean meats, and so on. So thank you.
Yes. So creatine is such a stinking anomaly that it does seem to have benefit for nearly any population.
Wow.
I know it's mostly well known for strength and power, for muscle building. And now that's kind of areas not really being studied much anymore, because we know that it works. So the new area for creatine, I'm sure you're aware of this, is brain health and protection and recovery from traumatic brain injury or concussion. So that's kind of the new area, but we just know it has a host of benefits, from muscle health, bone health. Like I said, the brain health, heart, there's even heart health aspects to it. That's one that I don't even consider it performance anymore. I consider it for health. Like I consider this as a healthy aging supplement. It's something I take to, again, I've had concussions in the past, so I don't foresee getting one anymore, but you never know. But also, like, it's links to slowing down cognitive decline and things like that. So creatine is definitely one that I feel pretty confident recommending to almost everybody. Gosh, outside, I mean, caffeine's gonna be in that camp that, like, yes, it works. And you can take it as you want for the certain situation that you need. Obviously, you need to be somewhat careful of like your individual response to it. Do you get jittery? Does it affect your sleep? All that kind of stuff. And gosh, honestly, outside of that, everything becomes conditional. Like there are other things that work, yes, but are you doing the right type of activity? Are you the right type of athlete to get the benefit? So beta alanine is like a perfect example. Okay. Beta alanine is often listed among the supplements that work, that we have enough evidence to say, yep, this thing works. It will enhance your performance if you take it. But beta alanine is so specific in its benefit that if you aren't training a certain way, or you don't play a certain sport, you're probably not going to get much benefit. So beta alanine is a buffer. So that burning feeling you feel in muscles after you do a high rep set, or you're doing sprints or whatever it may be, it helps lessen that. It delays the onset of those burning sensations that make you stop. Okay. So if you take beta alanine, you're going to be able to get maybe a few more reps. You might be able to sprint faster, more repeated times. But you've got to get into that glycolytic energy system. If you don't do things that produce those hydrogen ions that cause that burning sensation, beta alanine is doing you no good. So if you're a power lifter and anything over 5 reps is cardio for you, you probably won't get much use out of beta alanine. Same if you're like Olympic weightlifter. The only way you would is if you do a phase where you are doing 12, 15, 20, 30 reps, and you are like really going on the higher end of the spectrum, or you're doing a CrossFit phase, or you're doing a phase where, yes, you are getting into the glycolytic energy system. But other than that, you're not going to get much benefit from beta alanine.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So like a lot of them are in that camp. Nitrates, I think, are in that camp. Nitrates or beetroot juice. That's one that we know that's pretty well on the endurance side. If you're and I'm talking like things that last longer than 45 minutes. So if you take beetroot juice, or you are taking nitrates for performance, you've got to do things that last a while. If you're doing like, just like a general workout, or again, powerlifting or Olympic weightlifting, kind of even bodybuilding, you're probably not going to get much of an effect from it. And so that's just a conditional one. Like, if you're an endurance athlete, I would try it. If you're not, might not really be worth your time.
Man, I cannot wait to sit into your lecture. I've already learned a tremendous amount just in the time that we've shared right now, but man, this is going to be great. And unfortunately we're out of time here. I just can't believe this has flown by. So, and tell us this, if we want to follow you, like, do you have an Instagram handle, LinkedIn? Yep. I know you've got, and how do we follow your pursuits?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on all the socials. If you just search my name, Korey Van Wyk, you'll find me. I've got a website, koreyvanwyk.com, that you can see this presentation. You can see some other presentations that I've given in the past. And come to my talk. I'd love to have everybody there, but I'll be at the conference all the whole time, because I'll be at the Human Kinetics booth. So
beautiful.
We can talk some shop. You can see what books we've got. Obviously, I'd love if you buy a book. And you talk with me and Roger. We'll both be there the entire time. And I would love to connect.
Well, this has been great, and I'll make sure that I do just that. We'll have to hang out while we're there.
Yeah.
And Korey, thank you so much for being on. And I look forward to, come July, we'll be in Vegas. And again, for those listening, just go to nsca.com, nsca.org. They've just revamped their website, so you should have access to more information, and you can sign up online or in person. Hope to see you there in person. Korey, thank you.
All right. Thanks, Rocky.
Well, that's a wrap for this week's episode. And of course, thank you, Korey, and Human Kinetics Publishers for coming on, talking about everything that you've been doing there and keeping us informed. Meanwhile, remember, if you go to nsca.com, you can register online or virtually for the national conference, and you can get a little bit more information about what he's talking about, and maybe a little bit about what I'll be presenting on. So until next time, have a good one.